Anime follows the life of a monster who has killed many people, but he ends up becoming a stronger exorcist after saving a girl who becomes his wife. 2 years ago, a major disaster happened in Japan, where many lives were lost, including the lives of many people close to Rokuro, who in this case was a boy who thought he was one of the strongest exorcists alive. Back in the present day, Rokuro has grown up and is trying to get with different girls at his school. So far, nothing out of the ordinary. However, they all reject him because they think he's a big dumb after having to face another rejection. He runs away out of shame and ends up meeting Mayo and her huge plot. Rokuro asks Mayo if he has a chance of getting with anyone, but Mayo is his best friend, so she answers honestly and tells her friend that even a beggar has a better chance than him. Meanwhile, a purple-haired girl, if I'm not daltonic, called Bernio is traveling on the train, when suddenly the lights go out one by one. The passengers have no idea what's going on, when suddenly, a group of little demons hit the window, creating panic. Incredibly, however, Bernio remains seated and calm. The people outside look at the train, which seems to be being devoured by the darkness. Bernio then stands up, and the cameraman shows her thighs. Before showing her picking up her magic talisman, she decides to use it to open a gate, and before long, they are transported to a post-apocalyptic world, which seems to have been invaded by monsters and is totally destroyed. All the monsters enter the train through the window, and Bernio puts on her mask and prepares for combat. She picks up her sword and starts slashing the demons one by one, when suddenly one of the larger demons starts devouring the smaller one, all while other monsters attack her from behind. She manages to cut down most of the demons, and when she turns her attention to the biggest demon, it turns into something very big, very large, and very macabre. The demon attacks her, but she dodges it and intentionally falls off the bridge. She then picks up another talisman and uses it to save herself. Her fight was going very well, but a monster ends up grabbing her in the sky, and as she is pressed by the creature, her armor begins to be destroyed. In response, she quickly picks up a talisman and uses it to get rid of the demon. She quickly picks up another talisman and throws herself at the demon, piercing the beast and killing it in the process. However, before she can celebrate, she begins to lose consciousness due to the exhaustion of having to fight so many demons at once on her own. The series then cuts away, and we see that while this was going on, Rokuro was relaxing on the bridge, contemplating his shitty life choices, when suddenly a portal above him opened and Bernio falls right in front of him. In a split second, his instincts kick in and he jumps off the bridge and catches her before she falls into the water alone. Even though he has secured her, they both end up falling into the water, and Rokuro pulls them out, and after seeing Bernio wet, he tries to walk away as if nothing had happened. Immediately afterwards, she picks up a piece of paper and approaches Rokuro to hand it to him. He looks at the parchment and realizes that it's some kind of badly drawn map with a star on. He asks her if she wants to go near the star, and after she confirms, he starts to show her the way. He tries to strike up a conversation, but Bernio won't talk to him and ignores him. The two of them get lost, and Bernio makes him buy food for her, as she got hungry and lost because of him. After all this, Rokuro is quite annoyed with her, but he makes way when he spots a pair of brothers playing with each other. Suddenly, darkness falls around them, and they hear a lot of shouting noises, and when they turn around, the two brothers who were playing have disappeared from the area. Bernio immediately opens the portal, which makes Rokuro realize that she is also an exorcist. After they are both sucked into the destroyed world, Rokuro opens his eyes and is angry to see this world near them. The wounded brother tells his sister to run, because the monster is getting close. The monster was about to eat them, when suddenly two swords were thrust into its face by Bernio. Once this is done, she quickly runs up to him and grabs his swords to cut off the demon's head. It is at this moment that Rokuro realizes that she is a very strong exorcist. After saving the children, she puts down her swords and walks towards the children to make sure they are all right. Suddenly, a monster emerges from the ground behind her. Soon, they are surrounded by these demons who call themselves Kegare. Rokuro watches everything as his hands begin to shake with terror and anger at what happened 2 years ago. Meanwhile, Bernio doesn't seem to be shaken and simply takes a bunch of talismans and applies various buffs to herself to make her faster and stronger. When she puts the talismans on her body, they start to glow, and she picks up her sword once again and uses one of her strongest attacks. She attacks all the demons around them with lightning speed, cutting them all down one after the other. As Rokuro watches all this, he finds himself unable to believe that women can also be so strong and independent, since Rokuro used to believe that women were only good for washing dishes, all thanks to the great teachings of his grandfather. Bernio continues to cut up her enemy, and soon they all fall to pieces and are destroyed. After that, she walks over to the wounded boy lying on the ground and tells his sister not to worry, while she takes another talisman out of her pocket and places it on the boy, then casts casts a healing spell. The boy wakes up and thanks Benio, while Rokuro goes over to her and compliments her on her incredible fighting skills and endurance. She asks what the hell he's doing here, and he says that she dragged him here. But before they can leave, suddenly the ground beneath them shakes and breaks once again, only to show yet another giant demon. This time it looks like a spider, and Benio tells Rokuro to run away with the children while she deals with the spider. That said, Benio prepares herself and jumps on one limb of the spider at a time, but as soon as she tries to attack the spider's head, she is thrown to the ground. Rokuro immediately goes to her to make sure she's okay, but realizes that they'll need some distraction if they want to save the children. Thinking only of the children, Benio gives Rokuro one of her talismans and tells him to take the siblings and return to the real world. The spider continues walking towards them, and he asks Benio what she is thinking of doing, and she replies that she will defeat the spider no matter what. Rokuro tells her that she should run away with, but she tells him that she's not a failure like him, because she's an exorcist whose job it is to exterminate these creatures. That said, she walks towards the monster and prepares her sword for an attack. She advances at full speed towards the monster's head, but this creature is much more robust, so her attack doesn't have much effect. She falls back to the ground and decides to use her special attack, which consists of attacking extremely quickly from every angle she can. Instead of running away, Rokuro stands there watching, and he realizes that the girl won't be able to keep up this pace, and that's exactly what starts to happen. And he just watches her armor fall apart, and just as she slows down, the creature tries to attack, and she barely manages to block it, and her armor ends up crumbling completely this time. It's at this point that Benio decides to buy time, and uses an extremely strong attack that pushes the demon backward, but it leaves her breathless, and to top it all off, she's bleeding from the damage she's taken. She looks for more talismans to continue fighting, but she realizes that she has used them all up, so just when she thinks it's all over, Rokuro appears right in front of her, which leaves her completely shocked, as he should have left with the children. She tells him to run away, but he tells her to shut up and asks her to see what the power of a real man is. He immediately picks up a talisman and starts walking towards the beast, at which point he starts having flashbacks of the disaster that happened 2 years ago. At that time he was unfortunately unable to protect anyone, even though he was very powerful. Now he finally prepares to face reality, and uses a talisman on his hand, which immediately starts to glow and catch fire. He then uses his magic to channel the energy and convert it into a huge red gauntlet. Benio can't believe that this guy is an exorcist with such strong energy. Rokuro stands his ground and challenges the demon to a fight. The creature must not have understood anything. All it saw was the boy launching himself at it from the ground, and then with just a single punch, he managed to defeat a demon of this level. After witnessing such strength, Benio goes up to him and says that she has never seen such power before. Then Rokuro tells her that it's not a power, but a curse. The girl looks at him in admiration, while he looks down and says that she should forget what happened here, as he no longer believes he is capable of working as an exorcist. This ends up making Benio, who was born into a family of exorcists, furious, so she just takes another talisman and uses it to open the portal back to the normal world. After going through it, they end up having an argument. Benio tells him that she didn't need his help, saying that she could have dealt with the problem on her own. It's at this point that Rokuro follows what he was taught by his grandfather and says that women should stay in the kitchen. He says that because she was weak, a traumatized loser like him had to help, otherwise she would have lost her life. And the worst part is that he didn't really lie about being a traumatized loser. Annoyed, they both decide to move on, and when Rokuro suddenly passes through a dark alley, he realizes that he lost his bag in the water, just as he was trying to save Benio. Unfortunately, he wanted to buy some refreshments for himself, but all the money he had is gone too, thanks to the food he bought for Benio. Worst of all, he only bought her a snack because he thought he had a chance with her, which made him even angrier that he was a complete cattle. Later that night, he returns to the dormitory with his bag and finds Benio inside, being pampered and fed by her master and his superior. He is extremely annoyed, but he receives the news that Benio has joined them as an exorcist, and that from now on she will live here with them. The two stare at each other, when suddenly, a small flaming creature appears and jumps on Rokuro, telling him to back off. It introduces itself as Kina, and from the looks of it, this thing seems to be a familiar name to Benio. Rokuro shouts at them to go away and goes back to his room to get some sleep. The next morning, he is woken up by Benio, who stuffs a tissue up his nose and covers his mouth, waking him up. He is shocked to see her in his room and asks her what the hell she wants so early. She replies that the power she saw yesterday was incredible, and now she wants him to go with her to a portal so they can see who is the strongest among them. However, Rokuro immediately refuses, claiming that he would never lose to a female being. Then she goes up to him and threatens to cut off his two balls, but he still refuses and kicks her away from him, also kicking out her little relative. He says he only used his power to save, but he never wants to have to act as an exorcist again. At this point, she sees an exorcist who is older than her, and she asks if any Kagari have appeared, and the answer is obvious: she has work to do. The scene then cuts to the four of them going through the portal and coming across a huge monster in the distance. Everyone immediately backs away, but Benny seems to be mad as she starts running towards the monster, putting on her mask and dodging the demon's attack, while taking off her talisman and putting on her enchanted armor. She then jumps up, dodging the monster's attack, and starts running through its arms. Before reaching its head, she then grabs her ethereal sword, and just as she was about to kill the demon, it tries to strike her down. Fortunately, she blocked the attack, cut off the demon's arm. While she was fighting, the boys were staring at her in amazement. In front of them, she begins to slash the demon little by little, but realizes that it is much weaker than the spider that Rokuro defeated with a single blow. She then remembers the promise she made to her brother to become the strongest exorcist there is, and now Rokuro is a hindrance to that promise because he is stronger than her. She swallows dry the fact that Rokuro is stronger than she could ever hope to be. In the end, all her anger and frustration is taken out on the demon, who is turned into several pieces. After that, they return to the normal world, and a veteran asks if Rokuro has fought a demon in front of her, and she replies that he defeated the strongest Kagari she has ever seen. They get into a car and start talking about it, and the senior tells her that Rokuro came to this dorm about 2 years ago. Then something horrible happened to him, and since then he stopped being an exorcist. Meanwhile, inside his room, Rokuro gets bored and decides to take a shower, but ends up opening the door just as Bane is getting out of the shower. This causes her to chase him all over the dormitory with a sword in her hand. Rokuro runs outside and ends up bumping into a blue-haired man wearing only underpants. Rokuro asks who this damn pig is, but the master immediately shouts at him, telling him to apologize, saying that this guy is the head of all exorcists, the famous Arima. Everyone goes inside, and Arima excitedly tells them that he has wonderful news, and tells the old man to gather his exorcists and meet him under the shrine. The old master and all his students go to the shrine, and the master simply reveals a secret path hidden beneath. This is how they end up entering a huge cave-like area. The area is full of exorcists, who immediately crowd around Bane to ask how she is. Meanwhile, Arima finally appears above and tells everyone to listen carefully. He explains that an oracle has appeared in front of him and revealed that the long war between the exorcists and the Keggers is coming to an end thanks to the rise of the Child of God. According to him, this child exorcist will have legendary powers that are beyond their comprehension. He will destroy all demons and finally bring peace. Everyone is excited to find out who this child is, and soon Arima calls Bane on stage. Everyone thinks that Bane is the legendary exorcist, but Arima says that there is also someone else called Rokuro who must come up. Rokuro himself is shocked, but his superiors push him onto the stage. Rokuro tells Arima that he's wrong, but he ignores him and tells everyone that Bane is the strongest exorcist in all of Western Japan, and Rokuro is the strongest in Eastern Japan. Everyone is shocked to see Rokuro up there, as they've never heard his name, but Arima is calm and says that soon these two exorcists will show their skill, and then tells them that they need to fight each other with full force with the intention of killing. Rokuro is furious with him and says he won't do anything like that, but Arima says he has no choice, and Bane now needs to be more than ready to face Rokuro. After all she wants most is to test her skills against him. She immediately lunges at him and tries to slash him, but Rokuro is too fast and dodges and asks her to stop, as he wants nothing to do with the exorcist. Bane doesn't care and lunges at him once more, but Rokuro dodges and keeps retreating while she chases him. The girl even cuts off his clothes, and even under this pressure, Rokuro refuses to fight back and continues to dodge. She tells him to use all his strength, but he refuses, so Bane hits him with a kick that knocks him away. Everyone starts mocking Rokuro, while Arima sits down and tells Bane to try harder. He also teases Rokuro, saying that his friends died because of his weakness. He insults his friends who grew up with him and died, calling them garbage at their job. And for Rokuro, that was the last straw. Annoyed, he takes a talisman and turns his hand into a flaming gauntlet. Rokuro immediately runs towards Arima, but Bane attacks him again, causing him to fall backward. She then grabs some more talisman and enchants her sword before attacking, but Rokuro simply punches her sword, causing it to crash into the pillar. She follows on her knees, while Rokuro starts walking towards Arima, but she tells him to stop, claiming that she will defeat him and become the strongest exorcist. He tells her to shut up, but she keeps talking, which infuriates him, and he throws a bunch of fireballs at her, which she barely manages to block and deflect with her sword. Rokuro takes advantage of this and rushes to finish the fight, but Bane releases all her energy, which pushes him backwards before leaping into the air and delivering a massive blow that sends him crashing to the ground. He gets up up again, but Bane continues to attack him at lightning speed, and he can't even see her. Rokuro is furious and punches the ground, creating a cloud of smoke, but Bane doesn't want him to recover and attacks him again. This time Rokuro is ready and is about to punch her once more. And then, to prevent a fatal outcome to this fight, Aruma uses a magic talisman to nullify his attack, and the two of them fall to the ground like shit in a vase. Bane gets up, and Aruma walks over to them and bows to Rokuro, apologizing for having insulted his friends, claiming that everything he said was to see his true strength. He then turns to the crowd and says that these two exorcists are the famous twin stars that were mentioned in the prophecy. According to the oracle, their son will be considered a divine being who will put an end to all Kagari and lead the world to a path of peace. In other words, Rokuro and Bane must marry and have a child in order for the whole world to be saved. Now things are very strange since yesterday's fight, and Rokuro is having trouble even looking at Bane. Suddenly, his seniors come into the kitchen and start teasing them, but Bane is furious and tells them that she will never marry someone who doesn't even want to be an exorcist. Meanwhile, Rokuro's friends tell him how nice he was yesterday. Out of nowhere, Ryu arrives and tells them that they need to perform an exorcism. He asks Rokuro to take care of Bane, as she will be going to the same school as him from today. After hearing that, he goes to school and sits down in the same place as always, next to Mayu. It's at that moment that the teacher announces that a new student will be joining them, and when Bane enters, Rokuro is furious as he realizes that some very influential exorcist must be behind her presence in his classroom. The professor tells her to focus on Rokuro and Mayu. Meanwhile, on the other side of the screen, the exorcist boys pass through the portal, and a bunch of Kagari come waiting for them. Together, they set out to defeat the demon, making sure to do their duty by destroying any Kagari that come near them. Meanwhile, at school, Mayu asks Rokuro if he's seen Bane, and asks him to find her. Bane, meanwhile, was sitting on the terrace, enjoying her food alone, when she suddenly felt the presence of a very strong Kagari. On the other side of the screen, Ryu was telling everyone that they need to deal with these demons on their own, as he doesn't want to have to give Rokuro and Bane a hard time. However, Bane, on the other hand, packs up her bullet and starts to leave, but she is stopped by Rokuro. She tells him that a very strong Kagari has appeared in the city, and that his friends may be in danger. Rokuro refuses to go, but Bane immediately leaves to help. Inside the portal, the boys are having a very difficult time, as two of them are out of energy, and Ryu barely has the energy to keep up in battle. Fortunately, Bane appears at the top of the house and tells them to stay away. That said, she puts on her mask and begins to prepare for the attack, putting on her armor and enchanting her sword. The boys stare at her, totally fascinated by the speed with which she uses so many spells at once. Bane advances against the giant demon and slashes it at an insane speed, but this Kagari is very strong and forces Bane to retreat. However, while she was thinking about what to do, another Kagari appeared behind her. Ryu quickly takes care of it and tells Bane that they will deal with the smaller enemy, while she concentrates on facing the more powerful demon. Unfortunately, this giant Kagari turns out to be too strong for her to handle, and it ends up creating a small portal in the human world, which damages a toy at an amusement park. At the same time as this was happening, Rokuro was passing by, and when he saw some children in danger, he immediately rushed to rescue them. Bane continues to fight, and in an attempt to eliminate the creature, she uses one of her special attacks, delivering a large number of quick blows in a row to open an opening and finish the creature off with a special blow, cutting the Kagari from head to toe. After a blow like that, even I would die. Back in the real world, Rokuro was at the top of the roller coaster, walking towards the children and telling them to hold on to him, because this whole toy is about to fall over. The first child trusts him and grabs him, but the other child is too scared because the roller coaster is shaking and she's afraid of falling off. It's at this moment that Rokuro remembers his old friend and tells the boy to trust him and jump towards him. In the end, the boy died. Just kidding, it's going to be illegal. The boy gathers his courage and jumps towards Rokuro, saving his life, after which the whole roller coaster collapses. After saving the children, he returns to his dormitory, where he finds Benny and his exorcist friends waiting for him. Benny notices that Rokuro's clothes are all dirty and asks him about it, but he just says it was nothing and then asks how the exorcism went. Benny says she finished the job perfectly, and after working so hard, she goes off to get a good night's sleep. Ryu invites everyone to a meeting, only to say that he's going to present some exorcism reports, and then he's going to perform some exorcism. He asks what Benny is going to do, and she says she's going to clean her sword, then study for her exams, while Rokuro says he's just going to relax and enjoy himself. In fact, he's going to have a bit of fun locked in the bathroom. Before leaving, Ryu asks him to concentrate more on his studies. However, Rokuro seems to have been bitten by a woman, as he starts acting strangely and getting angry for no reason. After that, Ryu and the others go into town and send in their reports, then go to an old house that they have been asked to do a job on. They read the history of the house and discover that the previous owners of this house, the originals themselves, died, and after that, their son rented the house. But since that day, about 11 people have disappeared into this house, never to be seen again. Ryu tells them to split up and check each room very carefully. They enter and separate, but they can't sense any Kagari nearby. Still, to be sure, they end up purifying every room. Finally, they go to the last room, and immediately they begin to feel an unpleasant presence inside. They grab their weapons and try to look around carefully, when suddenly they start to feel a very strong sense of fear. They even freeze with fear and shiver for a few seconds. The boys obviously tell Ryu that there is something sinister that they can't handle in this house. They want to run away immediately, but Ryu tells them that they are exorcists and that they shouldn't be afraid of their enemy. That said, the portal opens and they all come face to face with a huge two-headed Kagari. The monster immediately attacks, pushing two of them against the wall. And when these two regain their bearings and look around, they realize that Ryu and the monster have disappeared. So, acting very bravely, the two of them use all their strength to escape and go to Rokuro and tell him that Ryu has been badly hurt, revealing that he has been trapped in another world with a very powerful two-headed Kagari. To make matters worse, they say that the Kagari seems to be waiting for them, which is even frightening. Rokuro then runs into Benny's room just to see her without any clothes on. Just kidding, guy. There's no such thing. The girl was organizing her fighting equipment, and Rokuro went to her to ask for her help, but she didn't pay much attention to him. Rokuro shouts her name and bends down on the floor, begging her to help him save his friend, because he's actually a piece of shit who learned to be macho from his grandfather and is afraid to go there only to see his friend die in front of him because of his constant uselessness. When he says all this, Benny realizes that something serious has really happened. So she tells Rokuro to hold his head high and tells him that he doesn't have to beg for that fight, because she is always willing to fight to save people's lives. Rokuro thanks her, and they immediately start preparing. Meanwhile, in the world of the Kagari, Ryo is doing his best not to die. The enemy is too strong, and he is wounded and exhausted. His only option for survival is to hide indoors while avoiding the huge Kagari who are looking for him. He lies on the ground exhausted and realizes that he has no talisman left to escape this hell. Suddenly, he looks up and sees a monster that looks exactly like my grandmother in makeup. The monster swats him away like a fly, and before he can regain his balance, the monster attacks again and uses its tentacles to stab Ryo in the leg. Before lifting him into the air, immediately, he cuts the tentacle and falls only to be hit again by the Kagari, which throws him into a building, destroying the whole area and injuring him even more. Ryo spits blood and has almost no energy left to escape. Now he believes he's going to die anyway, so he grabs his sword to try and do at least something before he dies. But his blow does nothing but tickle the powerful Kagari. The monster is undeterred and grabs Ryo, and just as he was about to be devoured, Rokuro arrives out of nowhere, punching the demon. He immediately checks on Ryo and discovers that he is in a terrible state, and this really infuriates him, as Ryo is like an older brother to him. Suddenly, the monster appears behind him, but Rokuro immediately punches it away. At that moment, the miners begin to surround them, and Ryo tells him to leave immediately if he wants to live, but Rokuro tells him to calm down. It's at this point that we see Bernio in action, eliminating several lesser Kagaras, and as they are so numerous, she uses a special attack to destroy all the lesser demons at once. However, the feeling of everything working out is short-lived, as Rokuro's punch wasn't enough to defeat the giant Kagari. When the larger Kagari rises up, several smaller monsters also rise up against them, and Rokuro tells Ryo to stay back, then rushes off to deal with each one. Unfortunately, he's not as fast as Bernio, and soon starts getting attacked while trying to deal with the remaining insect. But Bernio comes to his rescue once again, and destroys all the monsters in her path. She quickly looks at the biggest one, but Rokuro asks her to stay away, as this is his prey. That said, he leaps into the air, dodging her attack, and then throws an incredibly rotten punch at her face, destroying it immediately. Bernio quickly deals with the remaining scum, while Roku runs over to Ryo to check on him. He then picks him up, and they all head back to the dormitory, where the two cowards who ran away are relieved and happy to see him well again. Better to run away than die along with him, and no one knows. So they are the real hero. Later that day, Bernio returns to the haunted house and purifies it completely. Now the owners will be able to rent it out at a great price, because no one else will die in there. On her way out, she sees Rokuro sitting alone. She asks him why he's here, and he immediately bows, thanking her for helping him save Ryo. She tells him to get up and compliments him on how well he fights. However, after a nice compliment, she insults him by saying that it's no use having so much power and being an idiot boy. And because of this insult, the pleasant inclima between the two ends, and they go back to fighting as usual. If Benio were a real man at this point, he'd just say what he wants to Tamil. The next morning, Rokuro goes to the hospital to check on Ryo. He's fine, but at the same time, he's in a lot of trouble. He's going to be hospitalized until he recovers completely. Rokuro gives him a lot of sweets and snacks because junk food is good for improving circulation. And while he's out, he starts to think about whether or not he should be an exorcist. When he returns home, he finds everyone in the living room staring at Bernio as she creates a bunch of talismans in her perfect handwriting. It's at this point that everyone starts teasing Rokuro about his shitty handwriting, so he takes it upon himself to prove everyone right by trying to make a talisman and failing miserably. Everyone starts laughing at him even more, when suddenly the old master runs into their room and shouts that a large number of keggers have been spotted inside the city. Now these two boys, whose names I can't remember, don't know what to do, because Ryo was the strongest member and their leader. Fortunately, Bernio tells them that she will take over. She even asks if the Antichrist's son, Rokuro, would take part in the exorcism. Even though he's in doubt, Rokuro gets into the van with everyone, giving the excuse that he's just coming to watch and that he doesn't intend to take part in the fight. Just then a boy turns around and gives Rokuro a talisman holder. He says that Ryo did it himself because he wanted Rokuro to have it in case he became a real man again and stopped being a fearful beta, having the most broken power in history. Rokuro catches himself with a smile on his face when they suddenly arrive at the place and discover that it's an elementary school. If they face the little kegger, the kegger is the brother turned kegger. They run inside and find a distressed teacher who says that all the children have suddenly disappeared into thin air. That's when Bernio says that if it wasn't a priest, it was probably a kegger. So, as there is no church nearby, she immediately opens a portal and goes in with the others. All the children were inside, and they were being chased by the kegger. To make matters worse, they were all surrounded, and when one of the children was about to be devoured, Rokuro appeared with a great attack, pushing the demon away and saving the child. However, before he could make sure they were safe, another kegger grabbed a child and was about to finish him off, and Rokuro wouldn't be able to save the child in time, and he would end up being even more traumatized. Fortunately, Bernio springs into action and doesn't let this happen. She immediately activates her hacks and starts moving around like a madwoman, defeating every single kegger in her path. Even after that, a large number of keggers are still waiting for a chance to devour the children. It's at this point that Rokuro tells Benio to back off and picks up a pile of pebbles. He throws all the stones into the air and tries to blow them up. However, he can't do it because he forgot to use his talisman. After feeling ashamed, he picks up the talisman and uses it quickly so that he can use the power he wanted to use before. And that's when we discover that Rokuro is actually a karaoke. While the two of them are fighting, the extras gather the children and make sure they're okay. Once this is done, they quickly prepare the portal, but a large number of keggers start running towards them. Bernio immediately uses her hack again and starts destroying them, while Rokuro uses his ninja technique that he developed to commit an attack, but this was fortunately just an intrusive thought on his part. Using his technique, he explodes a bunch of monsters on the ground. The extras manage to open the portal, but suddenly a monster appears from under the ground, leaving the two injured. It's at this moment that Rokuro realizes that at any moment everyone could die, and he gets stuck, remembering the moments when he acquired his fear of being an exorcist. However, the extras don't let themselves be put down easily. They want to achieve a bit of protagonist, so one fights while the other opens the portal back up. The children immediately run through the portal to safety, which leaves Rokuro relieved, but suddenly a kegger appears behind him and grabs him by the hand, then tries to devour him. Fortunately, an incredibly strong beam hits the monster and saves Rokuro. The monster, on the other hand, was thrown far away, ending up directly on the wall. Amidst the huge cloud of smoke, a red-haired figure appears, looking extremely strong. He is immediately surrounded by a group of keggers, and to deal with them, he takes out a dagger and uses his talisman to convert it into a flaming sword. Once this is done, he sticks it into the ground, and when the enemy runs towards him, he uses a single spell that creates a huge hurricane of fire around it, which destroys all the keggers the moment it touches them. Rokuro and company are startled by this display of power, while the guy simply puts his sword in storage and leaps towards them. Rokuro quickly asks who he is, and Bernio approaches and asks what the hell he's doing here. It turns out that his name is Shimon, and he is one of the 12 guardians, who master the best spells and battle tactics. Upon hearing this, the extras are shocked to see a real guardian in the flesh. Shimon turns to them and asks who Rokuro is. They direct him to Rokuro, but the guy is just disappointed and ends up having to hit Rokuro in the face. He then continues walking towards him and claims that he was distracted during the fight. He could have lost his life as a result. He also acted like a failure, leaving his friends close to danger. He then turns to Benio and tells her that having a loser like Roku as your twin star must suck. She responds by saying that the boy has potential, but he's still a disgusting, idiotic child. Before they can continue talking, a giant quagmire emerges from the ground and eats a bunch of other demons to turn into an even bigger creature. It punches the ground, sending a shockwave towards our hero, but they manage to dodge it quickly, except for the two extras, who are caught and fall to the ground unconscious. Rokuro becomes desperate and worried about the health of the extras. He goes blind with rage and turns to the monster. Seeing him like this, Shimon starts to believe that Rokuro must be a wimp, and because of this, he tries to deal with the quagmire. But Bernio stops him and says that he could get hurt if he gets in Rokuro's way. Rokuro goes up to the demon and takes off his talisman before putting his gauntlet back on. He then charges it with his magic, and when the quagmire tries to punch him, Rokuro punches back, intercepting the attack. At that moment, there is a slight clash between the blows, but Rokuro overpowers the beast, and in a single attack, he destroys it completely. Shimon is amazed to see the power that the stupid boy had, and while this was happening, a mysterious figure was watching the whole spectacle from the top of a building. But as soon as she realized that the beast was being destroyed, she approached. At that very moment, Shimon noticed her presence, and then the figure disappeared. Before Shimon can investigate further, he receives a call from Arima, who tells him that he needs to get there immediately, and even though he tries to investigate for a few seconds, Arima calls him back to a portal. Rokuro follows him, as he wants to know more about it. However, Murdenha falls to the ground, exhausted from having spent so much energy on a single attack. Suddenly, he realizes that all those who were saved are standing in front of him, and they are obviously grateful to him for saving their lives. Later that evening, they return to the dormitory and have a nice dinner. During dinner, the two extras keep talking about how nice Shimon was, and Rokuro seems to have become envious of his strength. Then he turns to Benny and asks when Shimon became one of the 12 Guardians, and she replies that he became one 2 years ago, when he was only 14 years old. It's at that moment that Rokuro stands up in astonishment, because he's now 14, which means that Shimon was stronger than him 2 years ago. And now it's explained why Rokuro's attitudes are idiotic. He's only 14 years old, right? At 14, I hadn't even acquired self-awareness yet. And now Rokuro, at 14 years old, is starting to motivate himself to pursue and defeat Shimon. He knows it's going to be difficult, but he starts to smile, thinking about the day when he can become stronger than it. The next morning, Benny and Rokuro go to school, but during their lunch break, Benny senses the presence of a Kagari nearby, so she immediately excuses herself and leaves school early. Rokuro sees her leave, but decides not to follow her. Mayu, on the other hand, ends up asking why he's so interested in the new student. And on the other side of the screen, we see that the two extras are having a hard time dealing with so many Kagaris on their own. And the biggest problem is the big Kagari that's coming towards them. Luckily for them, Benny arrives just in time, destroys the demon, and immediately tells them to calm down, as she'll take care of everything now. The next morning, she goes to school as normal, and at the entrance, she ends up being intercepted by Mayu, who asks if she wants to sit with her today. Benny ignores her and moves on, but it seems that the girl is following. Mayu tries to approach Benny during P class and at other times of the day, but she is coldly ignored. Later that day, when she was about to leave, Mayu interrupts her once again and says she wants to be her friend. Benny tells her that she works in a very dangerous environment and that's why she doesn't make friends. Mayu starts to think she's some kind of yakuza, but before she can ask any more questions, Benny leaves for home. On the way, Rokuro calls her from behind and tries to strike up a conversation, but is immediately attacked by her relative, who doesn't want her to be fooled by this lowlife jerk. Benny starts walking again, and when they get home, they discover that Ryu has been discharged from hospital. Everyone has a party with Pixar and Then they all start talking again, and Ryu tells the two extras that they'll have to do another exorcism tomorrow, but Benny immediately tells them that she's going too. They were all happy that things were going well, when suddenly Rokuro opened his mouth and said that he too would like to go, as Ryu might still be weak from his latest battle. Everyone is shocked into silence, which makes Rokuro feel ashamed. He acts like Matsundeer and says that he's just bored with everything, so he'll go with them. What he didn't expect was for Ryu to immediately hug it and tell him that he would love his company during tomorrow's exorcism. The next morning, Benny gets ready, and when the three boys are ready in their equipment, Rokuro shouts and runs downstairs, asking them to wait for him, as he's up late today. In response, they tell him not to worry, and Benny takes off running, remembering Ryu's request that she let Rokuro take care of this exorcism, as he wants to see if Rokuro will really become an exorcist again. While she's running, Mayu intercepts her once again, saying that she's running to lose weight. When when suddenly Benny's stomach starts rumbling, and Mayu takes her with her. Meanwhile, Rokuro is fighting, and he quickly uses his talisman to put energy into the stone, and use them as bullets to blow up a group of keggers in one go. At the same time, Ryo finishes off another demon inside the cube the boys have captured. But before they can celebrate, another group of keggers emerge from underground and try to surround Rokuro, but he immediately retreats towards the other. Ryo takes the lead again, and they all advance together to try and defeat the monster. Meanwhile, Mayu takes Benny to a restaurant and orders her favorite dish so that she can become her friend. But while they're talking, suddenly the whole restaurant shakes and the lights go out, and Benny immediately senses something dangerous. Inside the portal, a giant kegger appears, destroying everything in its path, and when Ryo tries to attack it, the demon simply swats it away like a half-dead fly. The two boys immediately try to create a barrier in front of them to trap the monster, but it moves away and easily destroys their talisman, and then tries to attack them again. On the other side of the screen, Benny comes out of the restaurant, and she quickly sees a split in reality between the real world and the world of the portal. And when she looks inside the restaurant, she sees the chef being attacked by a bunch of keggers. She immediately grabs a talisman and tries to cross the portal, leaving Mayu alone. Meanwhile, the kegger try to attack Rokuro, but Ryo jumps between them and parries the blow, but he ends up being knocked out in the process. Rokuro looks around and sees his entire team defeated, which makes him very angry. He walks towards the kegger and takes out his special talisman, and then uses his magic, placing the flaming gauntlet on his arm. The kegger tries to punch him, but he easily jumps under the attack and runs up his arms to deliver a punch that completely destroys him. On the other side, Bernio deals with the kegger and saves the boss, after which she goes back through the portal, and as soon as she arrives in the real world, Mayu hugs her and starts crying, saying that she was scared for her. Bernio can't process these emotions but starts hugging her back, finally accepting a friendship. They start walking back, and Mayu tells Bernio that she knows the exorcist, as her grandfather is a former master of one of the dormitories. Suddenly, Bernio realizes that the old master of their dormitory must be Mayu's grandfather, and Mayu realizes that this means that Bernio must be living with Rokuro, so she immediately runs to the dormitory. They find Rokuro and the others who have just returned from their exorcism, but as soon as Mayu sees Rokuro, she jumps on him and starts beating him up for not telling her that he was living with Bernio all along. The next morning, Arama visits their dormitory, going through their entire legendary set of going to the beach. He tells Bernio and Rokuro that he has a special test for the two of them, and puts them in his car and drives off. Rokuro seems confused, as he doesn't know where he's being taken. He complains that they are going to residential area, but Arama tells them to shut up, as they don't know anything about the rigorous training that awaits. He then stops in front of a giant mansion and parks the car. As they enter, he tells them that this used to be his vacation mansion, where he would gather the girls from the job to teach them about exorcism. He then shows them the huge area, giving them several areas to train in. Bernio seems impressed with the academy, but Rokuro still believes something is wrong. At the same time, his suspicions come true when Arama takes them to a special room with ambient lighting. The place is covered with curtains and has a beautiful shell-shaped bed, and during this tour of the mansion, he tells them that from now on, Rokuro and Bernio are the owners of this mansion, and their mission now is to learn to love each other, so that they can make a baby as soon as possible, and raise it with plenty of love and hatred for the Kagari. Roku, like a good Japanese man, kicks Arama against the wall. Just then, a door opens and the master enters the room, claiming that all his belongings are being stolen. Rokuro goes downstairs and sees that these things have already been moved. Arama then tells Rokuro that as the chief exorcist, it's his job to ensure that the prophecy is fulfilled, and reinforces his words by saying that Rokuro can't die a virgin. After that, he leaves the house, saying that he will call them after they have settled in. Sometime later, Rokuro enters his room and immediately gets nervous, as this will be the first time he has to deal with a real girl. Meanwhile, Bernio, acting like an adult, is quite calm in her room. She simply looks around and says that her bed is in the wrong place, and starts to move it. She can't move the bed for some reason, when suddenly the whole room begins to tilt, and they are forced to lean against the wall, until out of nowhere, the partition between the two rooms is open. Suddenly a screen lights up, and Arama tells them that this will be one of their most serious missions. They will have to undo a child. He also states that any use of magic has been nullified, so they will be forced to simply use their physical ability and collaborate with each other to escape from this place if they don't want to have a child. After Arama disappears, Rokuro looks around the room and discovers that they will basically have to jump from one bed to another to finally reach the screwdriver. screwdriver, because only with it will they be able to open the air vent and escape from this place. Benio gets ready, but Rokuro tells her to wait, while he jumps up and tries to climb onto the first bed, but slips and falls headfirst into the wall. Benio laughs at him, and very elegantly jumps onto the bed, then helps Rokuro up. He ends up falling under her, at which point he smells a girl for the first time. He is then lifted up by Benio, and now they plan to act together to achieve their goal of escaping. But Rokuro ends up failing because he is an innocent boy and gets kneed in the face. Unfortunately, they both fall and finally get up again, only to make the same mistake again. And in another attempt, Benio gets him to concentrate, and they manage a successful jump to the final bed. After that, she quickly throws him a rope, and he uses it to climb up. Finally, they seem to be on to their last challenge, to reach the screwdriver and open the vents. To do this, they need to work together, so Rokuro lowers himself down, and Benio climbs on top of him so that she can reach the screwdriver. She quickly opens the vents, and the two of them climb onto the dark fixtures and start moving. Suddenly, Rokuro receives a call from one of the extras, who shouts that there has been a sinister attack by Kegeres, and that they now need his and Bernio's power urgently. They start moving quickly through the vents with a flashlight, and finally reach a screen which says that if they want to pass, they will have to answer the questions correctly. Otherwise, they will have to start from the beginning. Rokuro is furious with Rima, but Bernio tells him to concentrate on the task in hand, and they end up thinking of the answer. But this only happened after Rokuro managed to use his brain, answering correctly, and opening a door underneath them that leads them safely out. Bernio immediately grabs her talisman to help the boys. Meanwhile, the boys are having a very difficult time against a Kegere who is cornered them and would finish them off, but fortunately Rokuro arrives just in time and fends him off with his standard fire attack. The Kegere is furious and tries to cut him down, but Bernio arrives just in time and drives his swords into the demon's back. Kegere starts rolling around trying to get her off him, so Rokuro quickly climbs a building and tells her to back off. He jumps up to throw a huge punch that pushes the monster away before smashing it to pieces. Everyone seems to be very happy, and Rokuro suddenly notices that one of the bows in Benio's hair seems to be coming loose. She immediately panics and says that it was given to her by her brother and that it's extremely important. She starts rummaging through everything, thinking she lost it during the fight, but Rokuro grabs her and takes her back to the mansion, where he quickly jumps into the vent and grabs the hair tie. Rokuro's brief act of beauty makes Bernio stop thinking of him as an idiot, and she even blushes. Later they have dinner together, and just as Bernio is going to bed, Rokuro asks her about her brother. She sits down and says that they were twins, and that she always admired him because he was so much better than her at everything. He gave her these hair ties during a festival, but after their parents divorced, they split up too, until one day she heard the news that her brother had died trying to protect his friends during an exorcism. After hearing this, Rokuro comforts her and tells her that he has no parent and that he is only an exorcist because he was raised by exorcists since he was little, and this makes the bond between them stronger than ever. And after this nice chat, the two go back to sleep, but not in the same bed, at least not yet. The next morning, Mayu enters his mansion to meet Roku, as she has just learned that he is only there to have sex and nothing more. But he quickly clears things up, saying that he wants nothing to do with it, and that they are being forced by the chief exorcist Arima. Mayu approaches Roku again and asks why he's doing all this, since he doesn't want to be part of the exorcist world anymore. Then Roku tells her that he's already become an exorcist again. She starts shouting at him, saying that she doesn't want to see him suffer so much again, as it hurts her more than he can imagine. Suddenly, Bernio says that Roku has an incredible amount of power, and that this power has helped save several people so far, including herself, who would probably have died if it hadn't been for him. Mayu still insists that there would be no point in saving people if he died himself, and she says all this with tears in her eye. In response, Roku thanks her for thinking so much of him, after learning that he had returned to performing exorcisms. But if he could save just one life, it would all be worth it, even if he died. Mayu cries even more and leaves the house, walking sadly back to her own home, and remembering how she found Roku alone by the river, crying and burning all the talismans he had because he hadn't been able to save his friend. While walking, she suddenly sees a girl in the reflection of the mirror, but when she looked, no one was there. She thinks she must be hallucinating and starts walking again. Meanwhile, back to the mansion, Bernio was getting her lunch, and suddenly they see a green lucky charm, which Roku says is Mayu's because she's been carrying it around since she was a child. Bernio immediately discovers that it's a talisman and tells Roku that he needs to give it back to her, as he has hidden his magic from the monster, protecting her from any attack. Roku is startled and immediately runs after Mayu, and as Mayu is walking, she suddenly feels that she has been grabbed cab and again looks back so as not to see anyone. But when she looks in the mirror, she sees a dirty-looking girl clinging to her. She is too stunned to say anything, when suddenly, the girl smiles creepily and pulls her into another world. She wakes up and finds herself in a totally different place, surrounded by a red waste, and is very frightened. She looks around and sees the girl laughing like a maniac with red eyes, before turning into a Super Saiyan and transforming into a giant half-oct. It immediately grabs Mayu with its tentacles, reminding me of when I was 18 and watched this kind of content all day, and even recommended it here on my channel. The creature pulls her close, where she sees a bunch of monsters waiting to devour her. She starts to cry, hoping that someone will save her, and just as she was about to be swallowed up, Roku appears and delivers a very powerful punch to the monster's face in pure rage. The impact makes the demon leave her alone, and he picks her up immediately, asking her if she's alright. He tells her not to worry because he will save her, and she ends up falling unconscious from exhaustion. He puts her on the ground and turns to the monster, ready to teach it a lesson. As it stands before him, suddenly even Bernio appears, saying that he should take care of Mayu while she defeats this Kegare, but he refuses, because he wants to kill him with his bare hand. They start to attack, and while Roku punches hard, Bernio tries to cut him to pieces, but to their surprise, this Kegare is much stronger than any monster they've faced before. Before they can think of a plan, the Kegare is suddenly cut apart by several magical blows, and it is annihilated in a few seconds, right in front of their eyes. At the same time, a sleepy-looking guy appears, saying that this should have been an easy task for them. He approaches Mayu to make sure she's not dead, before turning to Roku and asking how he's been, while he trembles in his seat. It turns out that this guy is called Suijin, and he's also one of the 12 Guardians. What's more, he's Mayu's father, and Roku and Ryo's master, being the person who taught them everything they know. Roku tries to be gentle with him, but Suijin won't accept it and starts to punish him, while Bernio just watches the situation unfold. After that, he grabs Roku's arm and says that Arima told him about his return to exorcism and asks if he really thinks he wants to become an exorcist once again. Roku looks down before saying that he doesn't want to be the strongest and doesn't even care about any prophecy, but he can't let the people around him get hurt. Suijin slaps him, and Roku falls to the ground. Suijin then says that everything Roku is talking about is idealistic crap that nobody cares about, but Roku gets up and says he's serious. Hearing this, Suijin goes up to him and challenges him to a fight so that he can find out if all the guts Roku has is real. Roku seems surprised by this, but Suijin keeps saying that he won't hold back. Then it would be better if Roku also fought with the intention of killing. The fight begins, and Suijin immediately picks up a talisman before using it to create stone bullets, which he fires at Roku, who barely dodges each attack. His blows are very similar to Roku's attack, but Benio realizes that the magic and power behind Suijin's attack are incomparable. Suddenly, Roku uses a giant stone bullet to try and crush Suijin, but he shows him that size doesn't matter, before blasting the huge rock with his small stone. Surprisingly, Roku is prepared for this and comes out of it ready to throw a punch, but Suijin immediately uses his magic and takes the talisman from Roku and catches his punch. Since the gauntlet had already disappeared, he tells Roku that he could feel that he didn't want to hurt him, even though he told him to fight with everything he had. Suijin then claims that he's not worthy of being treated like a man, and says that he's not worthy of his talisman, before crumbling it up and putting it in his pocket. Roku tries to retrieve the talisman, but Suijin kicks him to the ground, before standing on him and claiming that he can never be a good exorcist. He calls Roku weak and reminds him of what happened years ago, which arouses the interest of Benio, who asks what happened. Suijin turns around and asks if she doesn't know what he did in the disaster, and she shakes her head. He tells Benio that Roku's hands are stained with blood. Suijin goes on to say that 2 years ago, a disaster happened in the dormitory where Roku lived, where according to the news, some keggers appeared from the portal, killing all the trainees who lived there, and the only survivor was Roku. Bernio is completely annoyed because her brother, after they split up, went to that dormitory and ended up being killed there by one of the kegger. Suijin then sadistically reveals that not a single kegger appeared from the portal that day, and that they were all killed by none other than his dear friend Roku, who lost control of his power that day. Genie can't believe it and goes up to Roku with a pained expression, asking if all this is true. But unfortunately, Roku simply looks down, being completely unable to speak. Suijin goes on to say that one of his childhood friends called Yudo was Bernio's brother, and this information takes him completely by surprise, as he had no idea that their lives were connected to this extent. Genie grits her teeth and asks again about the tragedy, and finally Roku accepts the truth, saying that Suijin isn't lying. Genie then loses control and picks up her sword, pointing it at Roku and challenging him to a fight. Roku doesn't respond, simply looks dejected and defeated, while Suijin calmly lowers Benio's hands, claiming that there's still something he hasn't told him. Suddenly they hear a sound, and a hooded boy approaches them, calling out to Roku as if he were a long-lost friend. Roku is shocked to hear his voice, while Suijin looks at him and immediately realizes that he is Yudo. Yudo approaches and takes off his cape to reveal his blue hair and an eye patch. Genie is speechless and tries to call out to her brother, but no voice comes out of her throat. Suijin tells Yudo that he was waiting for him to show himself before taking off the talisman, but Yudo simply mocks him and threatens the weakest link's life if he moves even an inch from his spot. Suijin is forced to stop, but Roku's shock turns to intense anger as he shouts at Yudo, asking how he's alive. Yudo simply taunts him, saying that the wound he gave him has fully healed and that he's here to rekindle their relationship. And this taunt is more than enough for Roku, who rushes towards him in a rage, but Yudo snaps his fingers and a bunch of magical ropes emerge from the ground, grabbing Roku completely. Suijin is surprised by this, as he didn't even use a talisman for this magic. He approaches Roku and starts mocking him on account of his friends and ridicules him for being so useless, while Roku yells at him, asking what the hell he did with the two children 2 years ago. It turns out that 2 years ago, only Roku and Yudo were strong enough to carry out missions and kill the Kagare, while the other children were still in training. Among them, Roku was by far the strongest, followed by Yudo, and everyone wanted to be like them. One day Yudo gathered most of the children in a room and promised them that he could make them all as strong as Roku. So they all gathered in a room, where Yudo prepared some kind of ritual and closed the door before starting a black magic. Meanwhile, Roku returned and asked where the others were to the two girls who were downstairs. They told him they were in Yudo's room, so Roku didn't think much of it. He decides to go out for pudding, but when he tries to open the gate, he can't. He tells one of the girls about this when suddenly the other girl from the show is taken to one by a mysterious force. They immediately follow her and find her crumpled on the floor, not moving a muscle. Just behind him, he finds one of the girls crying, saying that something very bad is about to happen. She tells him to stop the Yudo as soon as possible, and says she doesn't want to become a Kagari. Suddenly, she starts to transform and becomes a huge monster right in front of them. Before they know it, the entire dormitory is filled with Kagaras, all of whom used to be Rokuro's friend. Roku and the green-haired girl immediately try to run outside, but the door is locked, and one of the Kagari grabs the girl from behind and opens its mouth, drooling all over her as she screams for help. But Roku's whole body is freezing, and he can't do anything, so he ends up being forced to watch the girl being devoured right in front of his eyes. Seeing this, Roku really goes into despair, which soon turns into an endless rage. Belle can't believe this story and just stands there, unable to understand how a human could become a Kagari. Then Seijin tells her that it's called Kagari corruption, and it's known by only a few people who are brave enough to delve into the dark arts. This is one of the most evil things people have ever done to try to gain more power. Yudo used the children in the dormitory as guinea pigs to find out how much power he could gain and how to perfect his transformation. In other words, he tells her that the person responsible for the tragedy was not Roku, but his brother, Yudo. Belle refuses to believe this, claiming that her brother is the kindest person she's ever seen, and that he would never do that. But Yudo himself speaks up and tells Belle to shut up, because her voice is too annoying for him. He says he's sick of listening to her prattle, and Seijin says she should accept reality, as Yudo has always deceived the people close to him, and in his true nature he is a cruel and wicked man. Belle asks him if all the time they spent together was also a lie, and then he destroys her even more by saying that he never loved her, and that he thought she was a stupid sister who couldn't keep up with him and considers her one of the worst things that ever happened to him. Belle is stunned, while Roku gets so angry that he starts breaking the magic ropes with his sheer physical strength, heading towards Yudo, saying that no matter what he does now, he'll never forgive him for what he's done. He breaks the last rope and runs towards Yudo, when suddenly his queen turns into a flaming gauntlet of her own, before taking on a darker appearance and punching him. But Yudo dodges and backs away. While Seijin is shocked to see that Roku has done this without a talisman, the dust clears, and Seijin realizes that Roku has lost control of himself once again, as he becomes engulfed in rage, and his eyes turn red as he attacks Yudo. The attack is easily stopped by Yudo, who is undeterred by this, and tells Roku that he has complete control over him. Before throwing him against the wall, Roku gets up once more and tries to attack, but is hit again. Roku believes that the third time is the best and does it again, but is thrown away once more. The Roku doesn't accept this game of tennis, and keeps pushing him away again and again, while the Roku attacks him relentlessly without worrying about anything. Bernio watches from afar, unable to believe that her brother is the villain. Now Roku is completely lost in his rage, and he continues to advance, now throwing an even harder punch than before. But suddenly Genie appears between them and tries to block the blow with her sword. Roku regains his senses after seeing her, but he can't stop himself and sends Genius away in a container. And she says that she only did this because she couldn't watch him lose himself because of the anger inside him. Yudo walks up behind him and tells Roku that he always knew he was powerful, so he offers him a position at his side, promising to make him more powerful than ever. But Roku tells him that he would rather die than join forces with him. In response, Yudo simply smiles, saying that they will meet soon, and that until then, Roku must become stronger so that he doesn't get bored. That said, he finally leaves. Useijin tells Roku not to follow him and opens a portal. While grabbing Mayu, they enter the real world through the portal. Useijin takes Mayu away, while Abenio immediately gets down on her knees and bows in front of him, asking for forgiveness for the pain her brother has caused her all these years. Roku tells her to hold her head high, as this was his fault too. He claims that he lived with Yudo for a long time, and that he should have known his friend's nature. According to him, if he had pursued Yudo 2 years ago, none of this would have happened. Rokuro goes on to say that he's realized something. He's been running away from battle because it hurts him to remember what happened 2 years ago. Because of this, he hasn't improved at all in the last 2 years. He stands up and promises that he will become strong and defeat Yudo. Abenio stands up, saying that she wants to be stronger with him so that she can make her brother pay for his sins. After that, a few days pass, and Roku stands in front of a mirror and remembers how he went to Sagan and asked him to help him, but he tells them both that he doesn't have enough time for that, before giving the talisman back to Rokuro and leaving. Suddenly, Abenio enters the bathroom and asks him to free the toilet, as she needs to use it. Later, he goes into the living room and finds a beautiful woman sitting on the sofa, with flowers all around her. Abenio also goes downstairs and immediately recognizes her before greeting her. She tells him that this woman is Subaru, who is also one of the 12 Guardians, and her teacher, another strange cat-like figure, is introduced, whose name is Tatara, and is also one of the 12 Guardians. But people don't know much about him, or her, who knows? Suddenly, Roku realizes that if Subaru is one of the 12 Guardians, then she must be super strong, and asks her to train him so that he can become stronger. Abenis follows her lead and bows down, begging her to train them, and surprisingly she agrees quite easily, saying that the training will begin the next morning. Then, the next day, she instructs them to go to a special place under the guise of training, which is actually a boutique where they both get fitted for clothes. After that, she basically makes their training a date and forces them to spend time together. They seem to have a hard time doing it, and finally, after they get exhausted, Roku buys Abenio a bunch of food, which makes her feel happier, and they sit by the river, where they met, and stop for a while so Abenio can devour all the food. They were chatting about life, when suddenly a Kagari appeared out of nowhere, taking them by surprise. Abenis immediately opens the portal and the two enter, only to find an insanely large number of Kagari waiting for them. Roku immediately pulls out his talisman and uses it to activate his power, while Abenius uses his incantations and prepares to cut down anything that comes his way. Suddenly, however, she notices that Roku seems to be having trouble controlling his arm, as he falls to his knees in great pain, and when Abenius tries to help him, he loses control and attacks her. She dodges several times, while Roku does his best to regain control, but afraid that he won't be able to control himself, he asks Ebenio to make her run away. Ebenius is determined, however, and uses one of her talismans of tranquility on him, which consumes a lot of energy, but it calms him down enough for him to regain control of his own hand. He is shocked to see that Ebenius was able to do this, but her energy quickly drops and she kneels down. They prepare to face the Kagari, and Roku leaps forward, killing a lot of monsters, but Ebenio is too weak and falls again, unable to defend herself. A group of Kagaris attack her, but Roku immediately runs to protect her, before grabbing her tightly to make sure she doesn't get hurt. Suddenly, a group of Kagaris die behind them, and they turn to see that all the Kagaris around them have been completely destroyed by none other than Subaru herself. As she approaches them in her Victorian dress, they are immediately surrounded once again. But Subaru tells them to calm down as she takes out her talisman and pulls a pistol from her fan. She immediately starts firing at the Kagaris, killing each of them in a single blow. Before grabbing another gun, she makes everyone shocked to see her strength, as she shoots everything and other Kagaris. The Kagari wave doesn't seem to be ending, and she is forced to summon her giant weapon. She decides to go into Rambo mode and picks up a shotgun, before starting to blow up everything that moves around her, even making people stand still for fear of being shot. Roku notices Tatara being attacked too, but without moving an inch, all the Kagaris around him are destroyed. Subaru tells him that no one knows what Tatara's powers are, and that he is considered very strong, and his life is a mystery even to the 12 Guardian, and that perhaps he could be a woman. She continues to blast her enemy, and soon delivers a huge blow that kills all the Kagaris around them. Roku and Benny are shocked by her stamina and magical ability, as she hasn't even shed a drop of sweat. Later that night, Roku and Benny return from their date, and find the house completely renovated, looking like a palace. He seems confused when suddenly it's Subaru in a delicate situation, and discovers that she's a woman with a powerful body, and this obviously makes him as red as a tomato, and he feels his sword awaken like never before. Benny realizes this and kicks him out, calling him a pervert. The next morning, Roku has been assigned to do embroidery alongside Benny. He can't do it properly, and claims that Subaru is just taking advantage of them. But Benny believes that she must be doing this for a reason, and then realizes that she is doing it to increase their concentration, as Roku losing control of his own arm could get them killed at any moment. Later, he prepares some tea for Subaru, who has been hanging around and giving them orders. She gives him some tea, but she makes a little fuss before taking it, while Benny runs up to her with something to eat along with the tea. She tells Roku to give her a shoulder massage, but Roku has had enough, and starts swearing at her to stop messing with them. He remembers how weak he's been recently, to the point of losing control of himself several times, and every time, Benny has to save him. Subaru simply laughs, and tells them that any kind of training would be useless, as they can't think as a team. She tells them that as a team, they should be able to understand non-verbal signals very easily to be ready for any circumstance, but they are incredibly bad when it comes to understanding each other. Benny says that she understands Roku completely, but Subaru just laughs and proposes a game of hide and seek. She tells them that if the two of them together manage to find out where she is, she'll start taking them seriously and proceed with rigorous training. Roku thinks it must be incredibly easy to find someone like her trying to hide, especially in a huge dress like that. She then starts a countdown, and as soon as the countdown is over, she simply disappears into thin air. They immediately start looking for her all over the house, but can't find her anywhere. Benny calls Roku, who runs to her and finds her in her room, magazine in hand. It turns out that in that room, they found a note in which Subaru said she was going outside. Benny leaves, and Roku immediately runs after her. But after a while, he stops her and starts wondering where the hell they're trying to go. Benny calls him an idiot, before overhearing two girls talking about a beautiful woman wearing a very pretty dress. Roku immediately asks them where they saw the woman, and they point to a coffee shop. They arrive at the cafe and find no one, but Benny notices a cup of tea with lipstick on it, and realizes that they are close to finding her. Roku asks the waitress where the woman who was sitting down went, and she tells him that the woman went to a clothes store. They immediately head to the nearest clothes store, where the store owner tells them that they've just lost her, as she's gone into an antique store. They rush to the antique store, and learn that the woman was hungry and went to a restaurant, forcing them to go there. Inside the restaurant, the waiter asks if they're friends of Subaru's and starts chatting, but Roku gets angry and says he's not. But Roku gets angry and asks where Subaru went, and the waiter replies that she ate a lot of things and told him that his friends are coming and that they're going to pay. They leave the restaurant exhausted, and all of Roku's money is gone too. Roku was about to give up. He was going to call off the search and admit defeat, but Bernio tells him that if they want to find her, they should think about what she would have thought at this point. Jeannie thinks she might have gone to a gym class because she wanted to diet, and Roku agrees. The two quickly run to a Zumba class where they finally spot the back of what could be her. But when they get close to see, it was only the toupee. He gives them a note. He tells them that their guess was good, but unfortunately incorrect. They leave the building exhausted, when suddenly the whole area turns red, and they realize that the Kagari must be nearby. Bernio immediately opens the portal, and the two enter it and prepare for battle. But they can't locate the monster. Suddenly they are attacked, but manage to dodge. The Kagari this time turns out to be a giant octopus, which has appeared in many of my nighttime videos. Roku doesn't like this creature, so he immediately picks up some stones and enchants them before throwing them at the monster. But the creature dodges all his attacks. Bernio immediately picks up his swords and tries to use his special blade dance technique to tear the beast apart. But the attacks have no effect on the octopus's fat body. Suddenly, the creature releases a huge smoke screen, covering the entire area and separating Bernio and Roku. They try to call out to each other, but can't find their way. The octopus finds openings and attacks Bernio and Roku, but they both dodge the attacks. Roku immediately draws his talisman, but stops because he's afraid of hitting Bernio or losing control of his arm. Jeannie also holds back her attacks for fear of hurting Roku, and before they can think of anything, the monster attacks Jeannie again. And although she dodges the first blow, she ends up being hit by the second tentacle and is thrown against the wall. Roku tries to go for her, but ends up narrowly dodging the attack and falls to the ground again. Bernio gets up once more and realizes that she shouldn't be anticipating the monster's movements, but should act while paying attention to Roku, so that they can synchronize their attacks. Roku thinks the same thing, and finally they synchronize and prepare for an attack. Soon, the people attack them both, and Roku decides to attack, using his gauntlet to punch the people's tentacle, while Bernio quickly realizes what's happening and immediately rushes to destroy the tentacle. Soon, the two of them launch themselves towards the people in a kinergic attack, and they tear a hole in the creature, destroying it completely. Suddenly, they hear the sound of someone clapping and turn to see Subaru on top of the building next to Tatara, who congratulates them on their teamwork, saying that they've improved a lot. All because this time, Rokuro used 1% of his brain, instead of simply getting angry and attacking like a 10-year-old. Thanks to this time he was able to control his arm perfectly. The two of them celebrate their victory, before turning to Subaru and saying that the game hasn't finished yet, which means that they've won because they've found her. Subaru simply sighs and disappears, giving them their famous victory. The next day, she goes out with Tatara, and as she leaves, she hands a note to Bernio, who reads it and gets furious, before going into Roku's room and finding a beautiful magazine about human nature. Angry, Bernio throws it away, after which a few days pass without any incidents, and Roku continues to train so that he can evolve as quickly as possible. He realizes that his power has increased a lot when he uses his punch to put out a bunch of flames. He thinks about the times he's lost control of his power, and how he never wants to hurt Bernio again, so he decides to try using his extra power. So he uses his punches, but this time making sure that none of the flames go out. He does this with all the remaining candles, and when he feels satisfied, he realizes that he can't defeat Yudo simply by controlling his strength. To face Yudo, he'll have to use all his strength, while remaining in control. But now he decides that there's no point in thinking about it too much, so he calls it a day. However, when he walks up to Bernio, he finds a lot of smoke coming from the kitchen. He runs immediately and finds Bernio cooking something in a giant pot. The smell is very bad, and she looks like a scientist working in a nuclear power plant. He asks what the hell she's cooking, and she tells him that she's decided to make a great healthy lunch with vegetables, sardines, tuna, sausages, chicken heads, and buffalo testicles. Roku quickly scolds her, saying that her food is shit, and that she should never cook again in her entire life. But Benio pays no attention and says that her dish is ready. Roku refuses to eat anything, so she shows him a glass of Chernobyl juice, which she created and drinks every day to stay healthy. She says she even made a glass for him too, which is very sweet of her. But Roku still doesn't want to drink that shit. Bernio shows him as a baby and says that Roku must not be a real male and that he must love hitting hard, thick objects. Obviously, Roku can't let this pass, as he has the mind of only a 10-year-old boy. So he gulps down the drink too, but the drink turns out to be so bitter and bad that he ends up rolling around on the floor constantly while swearing at her. He gets up. He says she'll never be a good wife making horrible food like that. She gets annoyed at this and asks him if he can cook. And of course, he replies that he can cook very well. She looks at him in disbelief, but Roku is very confident in his ability. She challenges him to cook, and he easily accepts the challenge and tells her that from now on they will have a rotation policy, where lunch will be made by her and dinner will be made by him. And that's how Bernio ended up discovering that Roku is far superior to her when it comes to cooking. So she ends up allowing him to cook, before telling him that she's going out for the evening. Roku then starts preparing dinner, and Bernio goes out and starts running along the riverbank, thinking about her home-cooked meal, when out of nowhere she spots a mother and daughter couple happily carrying their shopping back home to prepare dinner. She remembers how her mother used to ask her father what he wanted to eat, even when they were facing a giant Kagari. They were one of the strongest exorcists, and they worked together all the time. To defeat the Kagari, they simply used their incantations and attacked the creatures in an orchestrated attack that destroyed the Kagari with a single blow, which always shocked the exorcists who saw them in action. Bernio adored her father and mother, and always told them that she wanted to be like them when she grew up. Meanwhile, Roku was preparing dinner, using the entire kitchen and cooking with everything he could to prepare the best dish Bernio would ever eat. He gets distracted and ends up burning something, but manages to control the whole kitchen. So he makes a nice bowl of rice with a fried egg, while a bunch of utensils are thrown into the sink to be washed by the dishwasher, which in this case is the affectionate nickname Roku has given to Bernio. He waits for Bernio to come back, then realizes that it's been a long time since she left, and starts to worry. Meanwhile, Jeannie comes back to reality, when out of nowhere Kanako says that they should go home, as it's already getting dark, but Jeannie doesn't seem to be in the mood to socialize and keeps running in the same direction. Suddenly, they sense that something is wrong, and she falls over, while Kanako begins to tremble, and says that she can feel the presence of a Kagari very close to them, and that this Kagari is also very powerful. Sometime later, Roku arrives at the scene running with the packaged food, as he didn't want Bernio to eat his food cold. He looks around looking for her, wondering where she could have gone, when suddenly a thought comes into his mind. What if she had gone to face a Kagari on her own? And that's exactly what happens. Inside the portal, Bernio is standing with her swords in her hand. She doesn't care that her little friend is frightened by the gigantic monsters in front of him, and as soon as the colossal titan tries to attack, she jumps up and decides to deal with it in a single blow. But to her surprise, the Kagari is blown up, and out of it someone comes crashing back to the ground. She looks at him and notices a creature that looks like a strange combination of a Kagari and a human with a golden eye. The guy asks her if she knows where he can find the twin exorcist, saying that he will kill her even if she answers the question. He starts counting down, and Benio immediately starts remembering when she was young, because her parents were defeated and held captive by this same monster, who also gave them an option back then to choose between saving her father or her mother. While he counted down to 10, she gets up and ends up saying his name, which shocks a monster called Kamui, who asks her how she knows about him. She doesn't answer and attacks him immediately, but he moves out of the way with ease, while she starts running as fast as she can, trying to land her attacks, while asking if he has no consideration for all the people he has killed so far. She tries to find an opening, while asking if he remembers the couple of exorcists he killed 6 years ago. He doesn't answer, which infuriates her even more, and she decides to attack, but to her horror, he simply punches her sword lightly and breaks it before using a magical explosion to break her leg and knock her to the ground. He approaches and says that he can't remember how many insects he stepped on before jumping up and delivering a hard kick to her face, which completely shatters her armor and throws her away. He approaches her, as she lies motionless on the ground, and asks her if she has lived her whole life hoping to get back at him for killing her parents, and if that's the case, then this was a pathetic show of strength on her part. He approaches her and puts his feet under her head, before asking her how she would like to die. He gives her two options, saying that she can die crushed like her parents, or she can die by having her head smashed into the ground. Literally, the two options are the same. He then tells her that she will have 10 seconds to decide. He starts counting down, and she remembers that at their funeral, she promised that one day she would avenge them, and starts crying while Kamui counts down. She feels totally useless, as she hasn't been able to do a single thing correctly, and Kamui was about to end the countdown, when suddenly, Roku throws a powerful punch that sends him flying away from her. He scolds Benio for being so reckless and trying to fight alone against such a powerful Kagari. Even though they are a team, he tells Benio that he even took her dinner for her, as he didn't want her to eat cold food, and this really touches her heart, and she tells him to run away, as he can't defeat this monster. Kamui comes out of the rubble and walks towards them, saying he's going to kill them both, but luckily, Kamui gives them a gap to escape, which gives Roku enough time to escape with Benio to safety. He immediately heals her and tells her that they must go back and report all this to their superiors. Benio is now very emotional and tells Roku all about how her parents died because of that creature. He then tells her that he lost everything he had in his life, but that she gave his life meaning. He promises Benio that one day they will return and kill Kamui, no matter what. But for now, they must simply survive and strengthen themselves to return stronger one day. This was the first time that Roku had made a mature decision in his entire life. And from now on the anime only gets better. But unfortunately this video ended here.